If you're feeling like the world is spinning out of control, stop right now. Because what I'm about to tell you is one of the biggest geopolitical wake-up calls of the year. Ukraine just made a move that doesn't whisper. It shouts. And if you think this won't affect your life, your economy, your security, or the future your kids inherit, you're wrong. This is the kind of inflection point that rewrites alliances, exposes power vacuums, and forces nations to choose who they really are. You need to hear this because the stakes are global, the consequences are personal, and the next few weeks could determine the world you wake up in next year. So stay with me because what comes next will connect the dots. No one else is explaining the strategy, the pressure, the leverage, and the truth behind Ukraine's explosive new move. Ukraine forces a geopolitical reset with new peace blueprint, and Washington is now pressed to declare its true long-term stance on the war. Ukraine forces a geopolitical reset with new peace blueprint, and Washington is now pressed to declare its true long-term stance on the war. Ukraine is not whispering anymore. It's not waiting, hoping, or begging for clarity. It is forcing it. And the moment this new peace blueprint hits Washington, the entire geopolitical board is going to shudder. Because this isn't just a document, it's a demand. And let's be very clear. When a nation under invasion stops merely defending itself and starts redefining the rules, that is a geopolitical reset. This is Ukraine stepping out of the frame of reactive country at war and stepping into the position of strategic actor shaping the next phase. And that move instantly puts the United States in the spotlight. Because when Ukraine rewrites its peace plan, it isn't just adjusting tactics, it's calling the world's most powerful nation to step up and declare, without hesitation or political wiggle, room where it truly stands. You don't put a revised peace plan in front of a superpower unless you're demanding clarity. And clarity is exactly what Washington has been avoiding. Ukraine's updated plan is hitting the table at a moment when American politics are volatile, when Congress is gridlocked, when military aid is slowed down by internal battles, and when global rivals, from Moscow to Beijing, are betting that the West is fractured and fatigued. And Ukraine knows it. That's why this blueprint is a pivot, a strategic escalation, a recalibration with teeth, because the old peace terms were built on assumptions that no longer exist. The battlefield has changed. The global economy has shifted. Western support is wobbling, and Ukraine cannot afford to build its future on foundations that are no longer stable. So what did it do? It rebuilt the blueprint, rewrote the assumptions, reframed the objectives, and in doing so, it forced Washington into a moment of truth. The message behind this move is unmistakable. If you are with us, say it with your actions, not with your symbolism. If you have limits, show us the map. If you are recalculating, then stop doing it behind closed doors. Ukraine is not waiting for American politics to sort themselves out. It is pushing the United States to confront the reality that hesitation has consequences. Not theoretical ones, but real, tactical, battlefield-level consequences. And the timing is not accidental. This happens as the U.S. prepares for an election that could reshape foreign policy, funding commitments, and security guarantees. Ukraine is saying, we don't have the luxury of waiting to see who wins your election. We need to know where your red lines are right now. This is the part nobody wants to say out loud. But it's the truth. By presenting a revised plan, Ukraine is testing the structural integrity of the U.S.-Ukraine alliance. Not emotionally, not symbolically, structurally, because alliances are not built on speeches. They're built on commitments, timelines, logistics, and accountability. Ukraine wants to know whether the U.S. sees this war as a temporary crisis or a defining global conflict, whether Washington is preparing to support Ukraine to a real resolution or simply trying to manage the optics of involvement, whether the United States is committed to reshaping Eastern Europe's security architecture or just reacting to whatever Russia does next. This is a call-out, delivered in diplomatic language, but make no mistake, this is a demand for definition. And let's talk about why this matters. For 2 years, the United States has operated in a gray zone, supporting Ukraine enough to prevent collapse, but not enough to force a decisive strategic outcome. That gray zone is now collapsing. The costs of ambiguity are too high. The battlefield has become more static. Russia has adapted. Europe is economically strained. And Ukraine cannot survive on maybe. So Ukraine is dragging Washington out of the gray and into the light. It is essentially asking, are you backing a Ukrainian victory, a negotiated settlement, or a controlled freeze? Because we need to align our plan with your real position, not your public statements. This is where the geopolitical reset becomes unavoidable, because once Ukraine asks that question, the United States must answer it, directly or indirectly, through funding, through diplomacy, through military support, through how aggressively it backs Ukraine in any negotiations. This revised blueprint is going to expose exactly how determined Washington is to counter Russian aggression and how much political capital it's truly willing to invest. And here's the twist. Ukraine's move actually increases its leverage. When you show the world you're not clinging to old strategies, you regain initiative. Ukraine is telling the global community, we're thinking long term. We're planning for reconstruction, security architecture, economic alignment, energy independence, and post-war stability. That's powerful. That's what nations do when they're preparing to win strategically. Not just survive tactically, but this also forces the United States to confront the gap between what it says and what it is structurally willing to do. Right now, the world is watching for cracks. Rival powers are waiting for hesitation. And Ukraine is saying, no more ambiguity, no more mixed messages, no more strategic fog. We need clarity because our survival depends on it and your credibility depends on it too. That's why this moment is explosive. Ukraine is not just sharing a plan, it's creating a mirror. And Washington must look into it. Every delay, every funding battle, every political speech that avoids stating real commitments. This new blueprint is going to expose all of it. This is not a diplomatic update. It is a geopolitical ultimatum disguised as a peace proposal. And it forces the United States into a binary choice: lead decisively or reveal that its global influence is weaker than advertised. Ukraine has moved boldly, strategically, deliberately. Now, the United States must respond not with rhetoric, but with direction, action, and unmistakable intent. Revised plan signals Kyiv's shift from survival mode to strategy mode, and U.S. election year uncertainty puts Ukraine's future on the line. Ukraine isn't just fighting, it's recalibrating. This new phase is a deliberate move from reacting to directing, from absorbing pressure to creating it. Kyiv is signaling that it's done waiting for perfect conditions or predictable allies. It's designing a long-term framework while the battlefield keeps shifting beneath it. And the timing is razor sharp because the United States is entering an election cycle where every foreign policy decision becomes political ammunition. Aid commitments, red lines, none of it is guaranteed. Ukraine knows a single shift in Washington could redefine its military capabilities, negotiating power, and reconstruction path. That's why this strategic pivot matters. It forces clarity at the exact moment the U.S. is least capable of offering it. This is Ukraine refusing to let American political turbulence shape its destiny. Global power rivals watch for fractures in Western unity as peace terms become directly tied to massive economic reconstruction stakes. Every move Ukraine makes is being tracked by nations eager to exploit hesitation, because even small cracks in US-FAU alignment can shift global power balances overnight. And now Ukraine's revised plan isn't just about ending a war, it's about securing the trillions needed to rebuild energy grids, cities, industries, and defense systems. That scale of reconstruction links diplomacy to economic survival. Any wobble in Western commitment gives rivals room to maneuver, invest, influence, and reshape Ukraine's post-war future in their favor. Diplomatic momentum shifts as battlefield stalemates deepen, and Ukraine challenges the U.S. to move from symbolic support to structural commitment. With front lines barely moving, diplomacy becomes the new battleground, and Ukraine is seizing that space before others define it for them. The revised peace plan is a direct push on Washington to convert promises into timelines, resources, and guarantees that actually shape outcomes. Kyiv is signaling that gestures and statements are no longer enough. It needs commitments that survive elections, budget fights, and political noise. The revised proposal exposes the cost of indecision in Washington as a new phase of the war begins, one driven by leverage, not artillery. Ukraine's updated terms make every delay in U.S. policy painfully visible, highlighting how hesitation shapes battlefield realities and diplomatic limits. With neither side gaining decisive ground, power now shifts to whoever controls the narrative, the alliances, and the long-term guarantees. Ukraine is positioning itself to maximize that leverage, while pressing the U.S. to define its role with clarity instead of caution. Let's bring this home. What Ukraine just did isn't routine diplomacy. It's a line in the sand, a bold recalculation that exposes hesitation, tests alliances, and demands clarity from the world's most powerful nation. And whether you live in New York, Toronto, Berlin, or anywhere else, the shockwaves hit you. Energy prices, global markets, security risks, election outcomes, all of it. This is a moment where the world shifts and you don't get to sit on the sidelines. You need to stay alert, stay informed, and stay ready. Because the decisions made now will shape the next decade of global power. And that's why you're here, because you refuse to be the last to know. This is USA World Reports, bringing you the truth with urgency, clarity, and zero nonsense. Thanks for being here. Seriously. If you're someone who cares about staying ahead of global shifts, hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to wake up to what's happening. Stay sharp, stay aware. We're just getting started.